Hello, Cape Crusaders. Please join me in welcoming a very special guest to our show. She is the definitive voice of Selina Kyle and Catwoman, introducing generations of people to Gotham's most notorious cat burglar. She's also starred in films such as Escape from New York, Creepshow, The Fog, The Swamp Thing, and so many others. Please join me in welcoming Adrienne Barbeau to the show. Adrienne, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Alex. Thank you very much. It's a beautiful day in Southern California. I don't know what it's like there in the middle of the night.
Yes, it's the middle of the night here, and it's cold and it's dark.
Oh,
I know. I feel bad for me. No, not at all. I'm very happy to have you here. So before we get started, I just want to let you know that we have had hundreds of our listeners write in for questions to ask you today. I've taken the most popular ones, which I'll ask you in a second, but I just wanted to share with you like the outpour of love that we've had from our listeners in anticipation of you coming on our show. So apparently your Catwoman is a very big deal.
Well, I've only just come to realize that, I think, in the last year or two. I mean, there's still a lot of people who, you were the voice of Catwoman? Yeah, you know. But it's wonderful to hear that people like what I did.
Absolutely. And a massive thank you to all our listeners for writing in all your questions. There were hundreds for me to sort through. I felt like I was working at the bloody post office at one point. So I've taken all of the most popular ones to ask Adrienne today. So if you hear your question being asked, then you asked a very good one. So thank you again. So one of the most popular questions that people asked was, Adrienne, when did you realize that people loved your Catwoman and the show was a big hit?
Probably 4 or 5, 3. I'm trying to remember when I did the first comic convention for Batman, specifically with Kevin and Diane Pershing and Johnny Glover. And, I'm not a television aficionado, I guess you'd say.
Right.
And I'm definitely not a cartoon aficionado. I know very little about it. I don't think I became aware of how people were responding to it until much, much later, after it was already off the air, maybe. And they released that beautiful DVD collection, I guess it was. Okay. And I'm trying to remember what year it was that I was invited to join the rest of the gang for a comic convention. I guess it was before the pandemic, so maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize. I just didn't realize.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's same with Diane Pershing. She didn't know that people loved her Poison Ivy until she went to a comic convention and had like 90% of the people coming up to her talking about Batman. And yes. She was like, what is going on? So I was wondering if you had a similar experience with Catwoman, which sounds like you did.
I did,
So going way back then, how did you get the job as Catwoman for the show?
That one I can answer. I don't have a lot of memories, but that one I can answer. I mean, I got a call from my agent saying, we've got an audition for you. Come into the office. It's for Batman. I had never watched Batman. I think I maybe knew Lee Merriweather. Maybe we had done a Murder, She Wrote together, or we may have worked together on something, but I didn't really. And my only connection to Eartha Kitt was when I was a very young, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. I spent all of my summers on my grandparents' grape farm in Selma, California, and my grandparents were Armenian. And I spent the entire summer listening to Eartha Kitt's 78 recording of Üsküdar, which was a Turkish song. I mean, right. they had this, it wasn't an album, it was a 78 of Eartha Kitt. And so that's the only thing I knew about her. So I had no frame of reference and I didn't know Batman, but I went in and I think it was probably a 30-second audition. Maybe there were 6 lines or 8 lines. And I just sort of thought, well, I guess, obviously Catwoman and Batman and blah, blah, I had a little idea. So sure. I just said it the way I thought I should say it for her, and I never thought any more about it. And I think it was about a month later that they called and they said, well, you've been hired to play Catwoman.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love how with Eartha Kitt, your inspiration wasn't from her Catwoman in the old Batman TV show, but through a song. That was the connection.
Oh, but she did talk in that song. She said something like, Uskadar is a little town in Turkey. And in the old days, many women, I don't remember what the line was.
Oh, your Catwoman just came out there when you were just saying those lines.
How she talked on that line. So maybe that's where I got it from.
Maybe that's, well, that actually leads me into my next question, which is, did you pull any inspirations for how you portrayed this character?
I guess maybe it was from, I never thought of the fact that she did talk on that. I think her last line was, "Oh, well, that's Turkey," or "Oh, well, that's something." I don't know. So maybe I took that. I don't know. I had already done Stevie Wayne in The Fog. And, people had started. The interesting thing to me is when I started my career, I started as a musical comedy performer. And when I first started singing, I was a lyric soprano. And then, by the time I did Rizzo in Grease, I was the original Rizzo on Broadway. I was singing in a lower range. But then when I was hired to do Maude in 1972, and I was working with B. Arthur, who had a very deep voice, I thought my voice was terrible. I thought my voice was, blah, 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 way up there. And it was Stevie Wayne in The Fog that sort of made me aware that, there was this other quality that I could use, I guess. And I'm sure some of that is there in Catwoman.
It is.
I'll tell you one other story. During the pandemic, I was in New Zealand filming Cowboy Bebop.
Okay.
And I had a lovely hotel room with a bedroom and a living room. And I was in the bedroom and I had the TV on in the other room. And all of a sudden I realized, that's Batman. But who is that playing Catwoman? Who is that playing? That's not me. And I went in there and I watched it, and I took the name of the episode and I went on IMDb to make, because it didn't sound. I mean, I didn't.
And but it was you, right?
It was me. It was
wow.
me. I didn't recognize my own voice.
Well, I gotta say, I've heard hints of it already. It is a deeper tone, but it's very smooth. It's almost like silk, your voice as Catwoman. And that's what always stood out to me as a kid, and still does now, and to so many listeners of this podcast and fans of the show, is it's like that. It's almost like every word is seduction. If I can put it like that, she's in complete control and she knows what she's doing. And yeah, I mean, I love loads of different interpretations of Catwoman because there's been many over the years, but that one has always stood out to me because you had nothing but your voice, obviously, and you brought that that level of just, like I said, smooth, calm, collected, cat burglar that's just okay, Batman, I've got you wrapped around my tail now, you know what I mean? I've got complete control over you.
Well, thank you. One of these days I'm going to watch it and I'm going to figure out, I'm going to say, oh, look, that's what he said I did. And I'm sure everyone who's talked to you about it has given so much credit to Andrea Romano, who was she was our guiding light. And especially in the instance, I do remember one instance where, and I'm sure everybody's already talked about this in other shows, but, we all sat in a circle with the script in front of us, but it was just the words. We didn't have any storyboards or anything. And Andrea was in the booth with the storyboards. And I do remember one scene, Catwoman is running across the roof of a building and she jumps and she lands, or whatever. And Andrea said, oh, Adrienne, think 10 stories, not 3 stories. It's much higher. Give me a bigger oomph, that kind of thing. And so I owe it all to her.
That's right, because you've got to do a lot of sound effects as well as obviously the speaking lines, don't you? You've got to do the punching, the kicking, the I don't know, like you said, jumps or somersaults, whatever. Every time you land that punch, that kick, you've got to go and it's got to sound different probably than the last one.
the plosive of the breath coming out as you land or whatever it was. I'd be hard pressed to do it right now, but yes.
So was that your first experience in voice acting, experiencing stuff like that?
No, I think I had done in 1984 when my first son was born, Cody Carpenter, who you may know, from scoring the Halloween movies and all of that with his dad.
Yeah.
Cody was born, and I didn't want to work full time. And it just dovetailed with my getting a call from an agent who had seen me on a game show. And she said, I think you have a great voice for commercials and animation and things like that. Okay, this is something I can do, and I don't have to go to work 6 days a week for 12 hours a day while I'm raising my little one. So I went and took I guess it was a voiceover class. Maybe it was animation with Andrea Romano.
Right.
And that was sort of the beginning. Then I did a series of, I did a lot of books on tape and some commercials. And I did some cartoons, just guest artists on various cartoons. I did Miss Simone in Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island.
Okay.
And in those days, it was, the voiceover industry was quite different than it is now. And agents were basically booking you without you even auditioning. But this was the first series I had ever done, and the only continuing animation. I did Curious George, Go West Young. I've done movies. I've done animation for movies. But Batman was my first and obviously the most successful.
So with that in mind, being your first series, was that one of the things that sparked your interest in wanting to play Catwoman, was to be a part of the series, or was it to play the character, or a combination of both? Like, what sparked your interest in wanting to be Catwoman, and how do you feel about the character now as well?
I think I was just overjoyed to be working in such a wonderful project with such great people. And and I always say, I love doing it because, I didn't have to put on makeup.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You have to worry about a costume. And,
yeah.
Go to the gym first thing in the morning and then just fall by the studio.
Yeah, no like skin tight onesie for you as Catwoman.
It was a great gig. It was a great gig. And working with, and I think the other thing that I remember, one of the things that drew me to it was I had grown up. I didn't watch very much TV, but I watched Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. in, I think, 77 Sunset Strip, or he had a series. And so it was like, oh my gosh, Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., I'm going to go work with Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. And then, of course, when you get there, you never knew who was going to come in. Mark Hamill and Ed Asner, and people I knew from other projects and everything, but it was a joy to go to work. And
that seems to be the key word that a lot of people on this show have said is joy. Specifically, again, Diane Pershing said joy. Going to work was such joy. And yeah, I've watched those episodes. I just, in preparation of chatting with you today, was watching some Catwoman episodes. And the one where you worked with Ed Asner, I watched that one, and that was just a fun episode. And Ed Asner's just amazing, and Ephraim, and all these people that you work with. But what do you have? Because the one thing that I know you guys did was you sat all in a booth when recording. It was almost like a mini stage play, almost, right?
It was a fairly good sized room, like a studio, and we were each just in a sort of a semicircle, and each of us was mic'd. I did do one episode. I was in Toronto working on something, and so I couldn't be with the gang, and so I did one episode.
Oh, I wonder what episotode that is. I know you wouldn't know.
God, I wonder
what that is.
No idea. I have no idea. What other thing I was doing in Toronto, and try and look at the dates and time.
That's even hard for me, and I'm a super fan, so don't worry about it.
I don't have a clue.
So what memories do you have of working on the show? Is there anything that pops into your head about working on the show in that booth that you specifically remember?
The only one that really stands out in my mind is the day that Andrea guided me through jumping off the roof, and telling me it had to be bigger. Because we showed up, we all said hi, good morning, how are you, blah, blah, blah. And then we did the work. And then everybody went their separate ways. It wasn't like you're on a set for 8 hours and you're hanging out or things are happening backstage or I just remember a sense of enjoyment and makes me smile.
No, that's nice. Yeah, I mean, one thing that I liked about Catwoman in this show is also she was an animal activist. She wasn't just a cat burglar. She wasn't just a thief. She, was against entrapment of endangered species, specifically cats, obviously, and wildlife. And I've always thought that's a really cool angle to go with for the show, because it just gives the character more depth and more direction, and I enjoy that for what it is, obviously, because you're not just going to go, oh, it's a Catwoman episode, she's obviously going to steal something and then something's going to go wrong and then she's going to get caught. It was more like she had a journey that was more, it's kind of like a bit heroic as well. She wasn't just a villain. She was also, she was her own sort of anti-hero. Yeah, yes. I like that a lot. Yes.
Yeah. I do remember one other thing. Selena Kyle is blonde, right?
She is, yes.
Yes. That was a shock to me. I finally saw it. What? I mean, I just expected her to look like me, I guess.
Right. You can thank Michelle Pfeiffer for that.
Oh, is that what it was? She came first?
Yeah, no, you did actually. The show did come out before that Batman Returns, that movie that Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman. But that was the show was basically designed to kind of be a build-up to that movie, right? Like Warner Brothers wanted a kind of tie-in, something on TV to then connect to the next Batman movie. So like Paul Williams' Penguin looked like Danny DeVito's Penguin, and your Catwoman, because those are the two villains in that movie, had blonde hair like Michelle Pfeiffer did. So you can thank Michelle Pfeiffer.
I didn't know that. I just remember turning on the TV, or I don't think they showed us anything. I think I just watched it and thinking, oh, that's not at all what I expected her to look like.
And you don't recognize your voice sometimes, so you must have been like, is this a different show?
What I was most taken with about the series, I think, was the art direction. I mean, my gosh, the sets, the Art Deco, the whole feeling of it is so unique and
rich.
And I mean, I don't know cartoons that well, but I assume that we hadn't seen anything like that before.
No,
it was really
nothing since as well. It really was one of a kind. And I mean, it's why I'm talking about it, and so many people still talk about it to this day, because it's just such a beautiful looking show. And your Catwoman, even though she's blonde, as you said, regardless of that, I think that her costume looked great, like the grey, like the whole suit. I still see now, like, hundreds of people cosplaying as that specific Catwoman going to Comic-Cons. I'm sure you probably met some of them.
Yes. And the one thing that touches me, I guess, is from doing these conventions, I have had many, I don't want to say young women, because they're not young women now, but many women come up and say that they gleaned something from Catwoman that enhanced their life, that sort of maybe gave them a little more strength,
yes,
or that helped them come into their own more. Now,
absolutely.
That's not me. That's Catwoman. That's not me.
Of course,
but it's fascinating for me to hear that. And
yeah, I mean, she's super inspirational.
Yeah. Inspirational is a good word. Yes,
absolutely. Yeah, she's very strong. She's very independent. She wasn't ever a damsel in distress, and she wasn't waiting for Batman to save her. Most of the time she was saving herself, which is a great characteristic, especially in the 90s for a cartoon. For a female character, that was amazing. Would you ever return to voice the character if offered?
Oh, I'd love to. I mean, I'd have to listen to it again.
Well, I mean, there'd be new episodes episodes and stuff. Don't worry. I think that would be great.
To get her back, I'd have to, But I'd love to. In fact, I think there was some discussion before Kevin died of I don't know, of doing something, but not easy.
Sadly, not a reality. Yeah, you can't really replace. Just like I don't think you could replace your Catwoman. You can't obviously replace the voice of Batman. And speaking of Batman and Kevin Conroy, what memories can you share? Either working with Kevin or even afterwards? It tends to be a lot of people again reconnected with the core cast at Comic-Cons many years later.
Yes, that's really where I got to know him a little bit. He was a very reserved man. Didn't expose himself a great deal, but that's really where I got to know him. I barely knew him when we were working, except just as two actors who were connecting. But the Comic-Cons, going out for dinner afterwards, and really enjoying him. He was in my mind, a very gentle man and a brilliant actor, not just as a voice actor. I don't remember anything specific. Johnny Glover, I can tell you stories.
Yeah, tell me stories about the Riddler. Tell me stories about the Riddler. Let's hear it.
Oh, Johnny, he makes me laugh.
Well, John Glover is very much akin to you as far as the memories of the show. I've seen him at Comic-Cons. And spoiler alert, it's the first time I'm saying this, but he might come on this show potentially. I've been in discussions. But he's at Comic-Cons and, I've seen clips where Kevin Conroy's answering questions and then John just goes, I don't remember that, but I'm so glad that everyone loved, the show and my Riddler and everything else. So, and what a portrayal. So what's some stories about the Riddler and Catwoman then?
Oh, gosh. We were at a Comic-Con, but I can't remember the punchline. He came over and he just acts silly. We've become friends and we socialize when he's in town and I'm in town, and I always look forward to seeing him. And he came over my table and he was like bowing and oh my God, Adrienne Barbeau, and then he blew it off with some insult or something and walked away. But it's very funny, and he's a delight.
He's a character, absolutely.
Yes.
Just to go back to Kevin Conroy again, I know, as you said, when you were working together, you were two actors connecting, and that was essentially the extent whilst working on the show. But that's amazing to hear because the chemistry between Batman and Catwoman has to work in order for those two characters to exist on screen. And I've seen a lot of different interpretations of Batman and Catwoman over the years, but your relationship, your Catwoman, his Batman, is the one, again, that I always kind of gravitate towards back to, because there's just something, and it's just your voices, which always fascinates me, because you have nothing else, but the chemistry between you two was amazing. So I guess that's what makes you both such good actors, because you managed to really find that sweet spot for both those characters, and it oozes on the screen when you watch it.
I think from my point of view, I think it had a lot to do with Kevin. I mean, as an actor, I was just playing off of what I was getting. Certainly we had the words on the page and the words were, they gave rise to that relationship. Sure. But he was just so good that all I had to do was, meet up with him.
I guess he was there every day, right? Like he was there every time there was an episode. So I've heard other people just say that like he was that kind of guiding hand for people that were coming in for an episode here and there and such like that. So I guess with you, it was no different.
Yeah, because actually, when you think about it, I mean, I think Catwoman's only in maybe
a handful of episodes. Yeah, something like that in the originals.
Yeah. But Kevin was there. I mean, he was the linchpin.
Absolutely. And there was even a redesign. Actually, going back to it, because I know listeners will say you didn't say this. You did get your black hair at one point because there was a whole redesign of all the characters in the late 90s. And your Catwoman was then in an all black costume, and she had very short, like dark brown or black hair, because obviously the Michelle Pfeiffer phase had ended at that point. So I'm just saying that because I know listeners would be like, well, you didn't say to her that she had black hair at one point. So yeah, at one point your character went through a redesign.
Was that Gotham Girls? Was that the...
It was... Yes, that's actually true. Yeah, it was also Batman. They did a redesign, but then that redesign went on to Gotham Girls, which, again, very good segue, leads me into just my next question, which is you worked on Gotham Girls, which was this little mini, almost like internet show. It was like very short little episodes.
Yeah.
Which
I don't remember it at all.
What? Do you know what?
Diane did the same thing?
Yeah. Diane said the same thing. And Adrienne, I'm in the same boat as you for once, because I didn't know this show existed until I spoke to Diane.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and because it was an internet show, and it was just short little episodes. But I've since seen it, and it's great. It's it's Poison Ivy, it's Batgirl, it's Arlene Sorkin, Harley Quinn. It's amazing.
And I will tell you, I have no recollection of recording it. I don't know. Did Diane say, were we all together when we recorded it?
Apparently, yeah.
Maybe I do have a vision of the ladies, the girls, all being in the same room together. It was probably early on in internet too.
It was.
It certainly wasn't streaming. It wasn't YouTube.
No, it was AOL dial-up. Yeah.
It's possible to see it now. I wonder.
I don't know. That's a really good point, actually, because obviously, you can watch Batman, on DVD, or you can stream it and stuff like that on like HBO, or we actually have it on Netflix over here now. But yeah, that's true. I've only seen it online, and I don't think the ways I saw it I can share publicly. Yeah, it was an interesting show. It was a cool little thing that was done that I didn't even know about. So that was cool to find out through this show. So there's other things that I've seen. You've obviously done tons of roles. So I'm only picking these particular ones out because one, I was a big fan of like superheroes and comic book stuff as a kid, obviously, and like action movies. I saw there were some credits for you for like Demolition Man and like Judge Dredd and the thing, and you're like the thing. And obviously the thing, but like you end up being this computer voice, which I found so interesting because I've watched those movies so many times and did not know that Catwoman was the computer voice in Demolition Man or Judge Dredd or even the Arkham Asylum video game series that was huge. You're the Arkham voice, the computer.
Yeah. John Carpenter's the thing. I'm the chess computer. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
That's crazy. I didn't know that. Oh my God. Oh, my brother's going to flip.
Learning that.
My brother loves The Thing. I mean, I love The Thing as well, but he's particularly really fond of that film. Really interesting. Did not know that. Okay. That's really cool. I can't watch that scene without thinking about you now. That's funny.
Again, I had Judge Dredd. I started getting residuals for this movie called Judge Dredd, and I thought, what is this? I've never seen it. I don't know. I don't remember anything. I sort of remember recording Demolition Man, but Judge Dredd, I couldn't. You're telling me I played it.
It's so fun. I mean, two Sylvester Stallone movies, almost back to back, where you're this computer voice, which like is very apparent in the film. Like there's a lot of times where that computer voice crops up in both of those movies. So that's very funny. So Adrienne, can you share what you're working on now? Now the strike is over. What's on your radar now?
It's on my radar now. Well, I had just finished right before the strike. I had guested on two television series. one which has already aired, Harlan Coben's Shelter on Amazon Prime. It was a recurring character if the show comes back.
Okay.
And I had just guested on another series for I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it, but for one of our major talents. You
can tell me off air then, because
I'll tell you off air.
I'll tell you off
air. And that's supposed to be a recurring. So we'll see if that, it has they couldn't finish it because of the strike. So we'll see if they finish that. And right now, making the festival circuit, I have a short film that's winning some awards called Oddities. And I was supposed to, in August, do another film. Of course, it got postponed. They're just going to pick it up again right after the first of the year. What I do when I'm not acting or writing is I do video describing for the blind.
Do you?
For all the series that you could imagine, television series, Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, and movies. They always give me the horror films. So that
I wonder why.
Yeah. I am telling you, you hear my voice describing what's going on screen in between the dialogue.
Oh my God.
So he puts his hand to his mouth and turns to her with a furrowed brow, and then you speak. That kind of thing. And I've been doing that for years, off and on, when I'm not, on camera or working on a writing project, and I really enjoy it.
That's amazing.
I get to see a lot of things that I'd never watch, or that I just never tune in, and I enjoy it. So it is using my voice.
Well, you got to do it. You got to do it for Batman the Animated Series somehow. That would be incredible. Be full circle.
I'd love to.
Batman turns to Catwoman with a very sorrowful look.
What it is. Exactly what it is.
A very longing look on his face because they'll never get to be together. That's amazing.
And during the pandemic, I was working on. I have a memoir that I wrote. Way back. And unfortunately, I didn't write anything about Batman, I guess. I mean, it's a series of stories about my life and all of that, sure. and the movies and everything. And then that led to a series of vampire novels, 3 vampire novels. But during the pandemic, I worked with I was the original Rizzo in the Broadway production of Grease.
Right.
And a year ago was the 50th anniversary of the opening of Grease on Broadway.
Wow.
And so we compiled a book called Grease, Tell Me More, which is a series of stories from all the actors. We spent almost a year putting together a collection of stories, some of them very funny, some of them very touching, from all of the actors who had appeared in the original Broadway production or on Broadway or in the national companies. Jeff Conaway, John Travolta, Mary Lou Henner, Richard Gere, Patrick Swayze. We solicited stories from all of them, Alan Paul from the Manhattan Transfer, about their audition, the rehearsal period, what was going on in their life backstage, the romances, opening nights, all of that. And we released that. It's called Grease, Tell Me More, for the 50th anniversary of the opening of the Broadway show. And the proceeds from the book went to the Actors Equity for the Actors Fund, that kind of thing.
Right.
So that sort of brought me up to date and got me through the pandemic. I did, it wasn't animated when I did it. I did the live action version of Cowboy Bebop, which was originally anime,
Yeah, and on Netflix, right?
Yes, on Netflix.
Yeah. You
I'm keeping busy.
are keeping very busy, yeah.
I try, I mean... we'll see what's happening. Oh, and then one of the second in the series of 3 vampire novels, which is called Love Bites. I have written with a co-author, Harrison Smith, who you're not a horror person. Harrison has directed a lot of horror films.
That's so again, I wish my brother was on here because he is the horror guy. And he's going to be kicking himself when I tell him things about like The Thing that you told me and stuff like that. So I do watch horror and I do know quite a bit, but I wouldn't know that name. If there's films, maybe I'll see
Death House and a whole bunch of them. Anyway, Harrison and I co-wrote a screenplay based on my second novel, and then we co-wrote a pilot episode. And right before the strike, we were getting ready to, take it to the network. So we'll see if something like that happens.
And where can our listeners find you online if you want to be found online?
Yes, I am primarily on Instagram. I canceled my Twitter account a long time ago.
Well done, because it's getting worse and worse out there on X.
It's really getting worse, especially if you're here in the States. And everything I post on Instagram is linked to Facebook, but I never look at my Facebook page. Sure. But my Instagram handle, if that's what it's called, is
yes, it is.
Lowercase Adrienne, ADRIENNE _BARBEAU, and that's me on Instagram. And then I do have a website, which I try to keep up to date, at least with, the projects that I've done or the conventions I'm going to do. And that's abarbeau.com.
Okay.
And I'm not even going to give you my Facebook because I never look at it.
That's all right. And I'll include
if
links.
You're on Facebook, you can see what I do. And it's at the number 4 and lowercase A Barbeau at 4 Barbeau. That would be my Facebook.
Okay, great. I'll include those links in the episode description as well, so people can just click away and find you. Well, Adrienne, thank you so much for coming on the show and taking time to do this. Really a pleasure to talk to you. It's been really great. Again, your Catwoman is just, I'm trying to make a pun here where I was going to say like head and ears above the rest, but head and shoulders. Head and shoulders. Oh, there we go. Yeah, she is perfect. Absolutely. Well said. So thank you so much. And I think I can speak for all our listeners as well. Thank you for all of your work that you did as Catwoman, because it is just outstanding. And it beats the other Catwoman by my... Oh, actually, before I go, there was another question that people are wanting to ask, which is, actually, I'll rephrase this. Have you seen any other people play Catwoman, and do you have any thoughts? And this is probably going to be a very diplomatic answer from you, but it's a question.
It's not a diplomatic answer, but it's honest. I haven't.
No?
I've never seen any of the films. And, maybe I saw an episode with Lee. That would have been black and white, right? With Lee
way
Meriwether.
back. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But I don't
That's that. Well, that's cool. I mean, that just makes your Catwoman just the most unique one. So again, thank you, Adrienne. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Perfect, my love. Let's go home.